Hi, welcome to Public Relations. This is functions, skills, and structure of public relations. So we'll try to take you through what we're going to talk about today. The role of PR practitioners, people that do this for a living, the 6 fundamental characteristics of the practice of public relations, and old school skills, what we used to rely on, new school skills that we need to rely on, and the basic structure of the way public relations is formed. So, we'll revisit that PR definition we talked about the other day. Public relations is the management function that identifies, establishment, and maintains mutually beneficial relationships between a firm and the various publics on whom its success or failure depends. It always comes back to those components of management and relationship, and they must be mutually beneficial. So, how do we do this? And this is the question we must ask. There are 6 basic elements of effective public relations that help us identify, establish, and sustain relationships. It all begins with the initial connection. But let's see how that all works. First of all, this must be a deliberate process. PR stems from intentional activities that the firm proposes to do, not just, we're going to be nice to people. You actually have to have a goal and a strategy in mind. Secondly, it is about a planned activity. It's driven by research. We talked about that in our first assignment, about the research assignment, understanding what we're trying to get done. We analyze the research and findings that we have dug up and try to make sense out of whether or not those things can help us reach our specific objectives. Third, it is about performance-driven activities. It must use metrics in that respect. We just can't say, well, we think we did pretty good if we got 100 articles printed in various publications, so it must work. That isn't good enough. Fourth, it must be in the public interest. We are learning that some of the readings that you will get in your second particular week of this course, you will start to hear and learn more about the idea of what's good for the firm and what's good for its constituents and publics is really tied together. Fifth, we know that it must be two-way communication because it's about sending and receiving, in other words, making sure that we get feedback from the public. And sixth, it is a management function first and foremost and last. PR is an integral part of management. It's a key part. The CEO must be involved because it shapes management practices and policy. Requisite skills, these are some of the many skills you should have if you want to be in the public relations practice. And the ones that we kind of think about a lot of times that rise to the top, the most important, because all these are good, all these are important, but which ones really matter to us? Well, it's writing, that's for sure. It's planning, as you kind of surmised. It's developing a strategic mind and understanding how research works. Those are kind of the big 4. And then we lastly refer to presentation. Presentation is important because you cannot get a person to buy into an idea unless you can present it to them in a cogent and simple way. So we take those things and we say, how do we then make these skills happen in PR today? Well, essentially, we add those skills with the realities of the workplace. Who's getting hired? It's people with those skills on the left side, and it's people with understanding of digital social media. 54% of the people 54% of the time we consider that to be the very important skill. Creating content, that's videos, stories, pictures, anything that you could post on social media. Understanding how big data and analytics work. Those are all important. So you move down the list. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to have working knowledge of if you want to be in the public relations business. How does PR fit in the organization? Well, we think about Mintzberg's description of an organization that is pretty generic. It really is about strategy, isn't it? It's about senior managers who focus on the outside environment. That's the end goal. We have to get to that point. And they shape the grand design of what the firm is supposed to do. The next row, the tech structure, the administrative support services, you can see that those are the things that make the business move and work. And then there's that bottom layer, and we don't mean bottom in the sense that it's lowest priority, but we mean bottom because it's the basis, it's the foundation, the people who perform the basic work. Where does public relations take part? Well, most of the time, if we look at functional organization, we will see something like this: admin, production, marketing, finance, HR. There's maybe 10 different categories or boxes we could put here. But we do know that most likely PR is going to be a function of marketing. because that is where it works. Now, sometimes it's actually part of HR, and that's good too, because that would be in a PR where PR internally is the most important thing you can do. That's why we think about it then being HR, because that's all about the peeps. The chair and the CEO must have a vested interest. The top of the house, the board, that must be a buy-in that is irrefutable. They must understand the value and be part of it day to day. And the chief communications or PR officer should be reporting to the person. This is the way we operationalize. If we think about setting business objectives, in that gray box indicates the environment within which we operate. Business objectives flow from this idea of having then PR objectives and having strategies and programs, working from left to right, objectives, strategies, programs. In other words, objectives, strategies, tactics. That's pretty common, the way that we kind of organize and put ourselves together to make things happen that are strategically driven. So then we look at two sides of the house, and that's internal and external. The agency is going to be good at developing corporate programs, higher levels of design and creative, promotion, fulfillment. Internally, public relations, media relations, employee, these are all really good internal functions because they're really the company speaking on its own behalf. Now, if we look at that and juxtapose it to our first session when we talked about the boundary spanning functions, you can see how it all fits in. It all makes some sense. Now, PR planning, we have to come up with some sort of a plan, and that's what you saw the first week we met. We created an overview, identified the problem in the case of the blueberries. We then decided that we were going to look deeper into the research. We were going to try to come up with a plan, which you read through that case, and you saw how they did that, and I showed you the deck, and then we executed accordingly. And what I showed you in class was that idea that we would be maybe evaluating at some point in time what we were executing, and that's the fifth step. So this becomes kind of a round process, if you will, or circular, not necessarily linear. And it is also backed up and supported by something else that we'll call the physical written plan, which would include these 7 components. That's kind of the way we think about it. That's the way it's structured. Now, the physical written plan is important because it provides the marching orders and details and specified actions that have to occur, but it is far from the actual importance of the way the plan gets executed. People have to know how this works. So, questions. The most important aspect of developing relationships in the public relations is that the target does what the firm wants. The firm gets the most out of the relationship. They are mutually beneficial. Which is it? They are mutually beneficial. Correct. Now, the second question we would have is the 6th element of public relations that are, it is deliberate, planned, performance-oriented in the public interest. And then the final one is two-way communication, is management function, results in profit and does good, or determines truth and finds wrongdoing. No, it's the first one. It's two-way communication. It's a management function. Question, the 4 old school skills that still apply today are writing, planning, strategy, and research, investor, media, employee, and government relations. None of these are applicable. Yes, of course, the first one, writing, planning, strategy, and research. And that is basically what we talk about when we talk about structuring public relations. Thank you. See you soon.